Hello, welcome, and welcome back. This is week 4 of responsible communication, and I hope that you have tuned into the other 3 weeks before you tuned into this week because we are building on each concept a week at a time. And today is going to come together. It's going to be like at least one side of the old school Rubik's Cube when you figured it out and you got those colors together. We're going to take the components of week 1, 2, and 3, and you're going to see that side of the cube, maybe two, come together. I don't think I ever solved even a side of the Rubik's Cube. My sister solved the whole thing. My sister's a little older than me, a little smarter than me, a little better looking than me. So I don't know what was left on my side of the gene pool. But yes, today is the day because today we're going to talk about empathy. And this may even need to be, I'm keeping track of my time, this may even need to be a 2 weeker because there's so much stuff that I have up here, folks, and I've tried to condense it. But if we don't get through it all today, we'll just come back next week and talk about it again. So before I start in with empathy, again, ideally you have watched the first 3 weeks. Week 1, what is responsible communication? And how is communication a habitual thing? What are your habits in communicating? And I want you to think about that. That's an intentional pause. What is the habit in communication that you would most like to strengthen if you already think you have some strengths? And or what is a habit in communication that you really want to build up on? So for me, it's been great doing this because I got a lot of stuff that I want to work on, and I have some strengths too. But I think the biggest one I want to build up on is not digging in. And by that, I mean, I got some feelings, I got some values, I got some experiences, and I'm not necessarily looking for new things in any of those areas. I'm not ambivalent, and we'll talk more about that term. It's a motivational interviewing term, but I'm not necessarily ambivalent in a lot of my different thoughts and behaviors and values. And maybe I should be, right? So for me, that's a big one I want to build up on. But what are yours? Week 2, we talked about active listening. And that's another big term that can mean a lot of different things. What does it mean to you? How would I know if you were actively engaged and listening to me? We talked about that on week 2. For me, I got a ways to go with that. Please watch week 2. But number one thing, I need distractions out of the way. We got a new puppy in the house. You may hear McLovin frolicking around. If I'm going to have a discussion with my wife or a discussion on the phone, I got to make sure that the distraction is at a minimum so I can really focus in. The other thing about active listening for me is I have to make sure that not only do I think I got it, but I got to make sure I got it. And that will come into talking about empathy today. And then last week we talked about nonverbal communication. All of those things that you do that aren't just your words, including your tone, the speed, the words you use or don't use, but it's not just the text or the email in words, it's all the other stuff. So today, in my mind, those three things are really important and there's some layers to them, but we go deep. If Lady Gaga was here, she'd be like, we're going out of the shallows now because we go deep with empathy. And I want you to think about that word. What have you heard about empathy? What do you think it means? Maybe you've never thought about it. I last week, in getting ready for this week, I went to a church service. I've been to several churches over the years and sat in a lot of different places for a lot of different reasons. But my wife and I have agreed to go for the sense of community. We go to a place that is really big on social justice and like-minded people. So for us, it's about community, and the message is good too. But the pastor talked about the difference between being nice and being kind. And I had never really thought about that. A big influence in doing this responsible communication was Martin Luther King. And this particular church had a just a mammoth kind of get together on Martin Luther King Day, and they brought in denominations from all over our area in upstate New York, and they referenced Martin Luther King in saying he was kind, but not everyone would say he was nice all the time. So kindness has boundaries. And kindness isn't going to shy away from tough conversations and social injustices and times when you say that's not okay with me. In the same way, I want you to start thinking of empathy like that. So let's dive in a little deeper. First of all, empathy in communication can be effective, but it is not a tool to just be nice. It is a tool to be effective. And I'm going to give you some ideas about how that happens. I've mentioned in the first 3 weeks in my communications, and I think in a lot of communications, it isn't about what the person says you said. It's about a person not feeling heard or understood. Now, empathy can help with that. As we move forward through this year-long podcast of responsible communication, I've been thinking about some things. It's kind of building the plane as we fly along of what is responsible communication. Well, we know it's a choice. We know it's looking at habits and strengths that you have. We know it's about communicating in a way that involves active listening and also looking for those nonverbals. So here's the deep stuff. Responsible communication is considering your impact on others. It's considering the autonomy and freedom that the other person has, and it's considering the relationship that this conversation or communication is happening in. So, what is the tension when it comes to irresponsible or ineffective communication? I think sometimes people want to help, but in their wanting to help or the way that they're approaching it, they accidentally push people away or they increase what motivational interviewing would call discord or resistance within the relationship. So let's talk a little bit about, I want to give you some ideas. I've been mentioning motivational interviewing since week one. I'm also going to mention the 7 habits, and then I'm going to bring in a new heavy hitter for empathy. And I think this person is wonderful, and I hope you'll look into all 3 of these concepts because this is just the starter. Over this next week, I'm going to give you some ideas of things you can really employ to increase empathy. So, motivational interviewing, I'm going to tell you in future weeks, it's nerd stuff now. But the difference between the spirit of motivational interviewing and the practice of motivational interviewing. Let's stick with the spirit now, because you can use this in any conversation that you have, any communication that you have. The spirit of motivational interviewing involves viewing our conversation as a partnership. It also involves an acceptance on my part of where you're coming from and what your beliefs are and what your values are. I accept that. I may not agree with it, but I'm choosing to accept it. I also am going to have a degree of compassion. And compassion and empathy definitely fit together, but I'll drill down on compassion another week because that's a word we can easily spend at least a half an hour on. And then the last part of the spirit of motivational interviewing is empowerment. Through this conversation, I am hoping to empower the person I'm listening to, which means I'm not going to be the fixer. I'm not going to be the sage on the stage. I'm going to listen, and hopefully, through this, in some way, I have built you up and not made you feel worse. I've made you feel better about whatever you're going through. So, with MI, motivational interviewing, it was the first time I heard empathy actually described as accurate empathy. And according to MI, there's a difference between empathy, just empathy, and accurate empathy that's going to hit all four of those things in the spirit. So, accurate empathy is the ability to understand internally what someone's going through and reflect it back to them in a way that that person you reflect it back to goes, yeah, yeah. Or maybe they don't go, yeah. Maybe they go, no, it's more like this. But accurate empathy is like a target in a conversation where you're reflecting, trying to get to what their experience is. Not where they are now, but what is their experience that has brought them to this point. Accurate empathy. So the difference between sympathy, empathy, and accurate empathy is in sympathy and empathy. And again, I'm using an MI focus here, but the new heavy hitter that I'm going to introduce you to in a couple minutes speaks very much in the same language. So the difference is with sympathy, you think you understand. Oh, I feel so bad for you. Oh, that's awful, right? I think I understand. But in accurate empathy, I reflect and have a discussion before I put a label on what I think you're going through. If that sounds a little out there, just bear with me a little bit. So, with accurate empathy, here are the things that you are looking for. And you're going to ask questions and you're going to reflect to get there. Feelings. How does this person feel? And it may not be the same feeling word that you have. I'd be so angry about that. But the person says, oh, I'm not really angry. I'm disappointed or upset or sad. It may be values. Oh, I can't believe that they did that to you. That was really ripping you off. I grew up in a family business, so I have a lot of values about businesses and how they should be run and not run. But my values may be different than yours. Concerns. What is this person's concern with what's going on with them right now? So instead of me just saying, oh, here's what you got to do, I want to hear more about their concern if they take a course of action. And here's a big word, ambivalence. Is this person thinking they want to do anything? Or do they just want to be heard where they're at? And later on, we will go deeper, maybe nerd out. There is a difference between ambivalence that a person has. Not sure if I should do something. I am kind of looking for advice. That's internal. And resistance and discord. Resistance and discord is always between you and the person you're talking to. Ambivalence is internal, it's one person. Resistance and discord is two people, might be more. All right. So, all of this to say, here are some reflections that might be different. I listen to someone and they're complaining to me about their boss. So instead of me saying, you don't like being told what to do, because I don't like being told what to do. So I think I got it, and I've listened actively to this person. I say, uh, you don't like being told what to do. Instead of that, I say, you really value making your own choices, and being pushed makes you want to shut down. That's accurate empathy. The first one was me putting my values. There is some empathy in there. I'm trying. But the second one goes deeper. You really value making your own choices or being independent. I know I do, but in this sense, that's what I'm hearing. And being pushed in a different way makes you just want to shut down. Now, what's going to happen if I say that to a person? They're either going to say, yeah, exactly. Yep, that's right. Or maybe they're going to say, no, not that. It's more like from this person, I just have a strong reaction because they're asking me to do something that I would do, but they never do it themselves. So even if the person corrects you when you take a shot at what their value is or their thought is or what you're hearing, you're still using accurate empathy because that correction that they're telling you is just getting you closer on the target board to where they're at. And that's what accurate empathy is all about, folks. It's trying to understand another person's experience and having them discuss if you hit the target or not. What accurate empathy is not, and what happens way too often in discussions, and I'm talking about discussions and communications where people really care about each other, the person listening tries to fix it too quickly. The person listening tries to persuade, right? In a different way. The person listening just agrees. Uh-huh, you're right. Your boss does stink. You should get a different job, right? There's a few in there. Or the person listening minimizes. Oh, well, it's not that bad. I've had it a lot worse. And none of those things are wrong, and none of those things are meant to be harmful or raise resistance or discord. They're just not effective. So, what I am encouraging you to do is be responsible when you are going into a conversation with partnership, acceptance, compassion, and empowerment, and just try to find that person's experience. That's going to be your homework for this week, maybe 2 weeks. And you can use all those tools, just like the Karate Kid. All those tools we talked about the last 3 weeks, you can use. When you do it correctly, and I have seen this happen time and time again, it lowers the person's resistance in the conversation. It reduces their defensiveness about the topic you're talking about. It definitely increases trust between you two, and it creates this space for what motivational interviewing calls change talk. And change talk is key in any behavioral change. More to come on that later. All right, let's switch gears. The second thing that I've been talking about for 3 weeks is the 7 habits. So here's 3 of those habits and how they apply to accurate empathy. First one, and it's actually habit 1, be proactive. You make a choice in how you show up to this conversation and how you're going to communicate with a person. Even, we'll come back here in a minute or two, even in difficult conversations. Because for me, the proactive and choosing how I want to show up is great when it's someone I'm really comfortable with and we share a lot of values and things that we agree and disagree on. But difficult conversations, it can be more challenging to be proactive. Second thing, begin with the end in mind. What am I looking for in this conversation? Do I just want this person to agree with me? Or do I really want to understand what this person's experience is that brought them to this point with no expectation that they're going to go, Brian, you're right, or they're going to change their mind in any way? And the other habit to think about is actually habit 5, and it's seek first to be understood. Oh, I'm sorry. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. That's the one I talked about with nonverbal communication last week. Active listening, it's the same thing. I want to understand you. But here with accurate empathy, It's not just understanding the words, going back to nonverbal communication, it's also understanding their experience, which may be very different from yours. So that's how motivational interviewing and the seven habits show up with accurate empathy. Now, here's my new heavy hitter, the person I want you to look into on empathy, Brene Brown. If you haven't checked out anything by Brene Brown yet, this is where she really kind of blew my mind. And Brene Brown came into, I won't give you her whole biography because we'd be here forever, but she came into this helping realm kind of by accident because she did a podcast, a TED Talk, I believe, about vulnerability. And she had done studies. She's more of a scientist or sociologist than a helper, which I love. Uh, but she did this thing about vulnerability and the power of vulnerability and how it works with people. And it just blew up on the internet. So now she's written a lot of different books. She has a podcast that I listen to all the time. And here's what she says about empathy. It's very much aligned with motivational interviewing and the seven habits, but she's a straight shooter. So she says empathy is not about fixing people, it's about connecting with them. That makes sense. Empathy isn't saying the perfect thing, and it's not giving advice. And it's not trying to make someone feel better as fast as possible, right? What empathy is, according to Brene Brown, is you simply saying, I'm here with you in this that you're in. I'm just here. I just showed up and I'm here. So empathy is feeling with people, not for them. And that's where Brene Brown would put a difference between sympathy and empathy. I'm so sad for you. Oh, that's so bad, right? I'm going to feel for you. I want to feel with you. But in order to feel with you, I got to know what your feelings are. So when you feel with somebody, that's a much deeper connection than when I just slap the feeling on and I say, this is what I'm going to feel for you. What does that involve? Perspective taking. And Brene Brown, again, is using a little different language, but I think these three approaches are basically saying the same thing. Perspective taking is asking a person, what does this feel like? But also internally saying to yourself, what must this feel like from their side, right? It's like putting yourself in their shoes. That was a saying I grew up with, but it's even a different level from that. It also means you got to put down your judgment, right? Just put down judgment. And even if you're trying to help, it can come across as judgment. Brene Brown uses some examples like, well, at least it's this and it's not that, right? Or, oh, you know what you should do? Or, hey, have you tried? You may be very well intentioned, but those things are not accurate empathy. And those things can raise resistance, they can raise discord, and they can make people feel like they're being judged. The other thing she talks about is, I've mentioned this before, look for emotions and try to use in your language and communication the emotion. What's the feeling that you're hearing in this conversation? And maybe ask him that. Oh, it sounds like you were disappointed, right? Wow, that really seems overwhelming. Boy, I'd be scared. I'd be angry. That sounds really lonely. And all I'm doing is throwing out through my filter some emotional language where the person can agree or disagree, like I said before. Brene Brown goes a little bit deeper with empathy and says rarely does saying anything to somebody make them feel better all by itself. What makes the person feel better when we're communicating is our connection at that moment. And I know what she means. I've had some very intense conversations with people, and we're going through some stuff, and all of a sudden, if someone's crying or something happens, they snort. Or there was one time when, the snot came out of their nose, and we both started laughing, and that was the thing. I didn't have anything to offer them that was going to make the loss or the trauma or the thing they were going through better. It was the fact that we were there together experiencing this, and I wasn't going to go anywhere. So, here's a question for you. How comfortable are you with uncomfortable emotions, right? Because so often we try to help people by fixing it, explaining it away, or escaping it. I'm going to change the subject. That's all on you. That's all on me. Uncomfortable situations when people are going through things that you are uncomfortable with. And we're all going through something in America right now that we are uncomfortable with, right? How do we get to accurate empathy with that and at least try to understand people, especially those people who are coming from a very different place than you? That is challenging. That is hard. Sitting with that discomfort and not trying to shy away or run away or shut it down or yell at the person. You can see why we're going to do this for a year, because this is going to take a while for me, and I hope you'll join me along the way. So, with accurate empathy, you are not only trying to understand the person's experience, you're not trying to negate it, you're not trying to fix it, you're not trying to change it, but you're also trying to honor it. And it doesn't mean you agree with it, but honoring it simply means, okay, that is your background. That is your beliefs. Those are the things you've been told. And I have a better understanding of how you got here. I've mentioned some of these before, but what things will shut this down quicker than anything else? Motivational interviewing calls it the fixing reflex. Oh, I know what you should do, right? Fixing it, coming up with something to just put the bandage on. Lecturing someone, correcting someone, trying to convince someone. Social media is full of that now. And here's a really important thing. It's small, but I can't tell you how powerful this has been. When someone tells you and shares with you where they're coming from, saying yes, but as soon as I drop that but in there, it negates everything they've said before. So if you're not going to make any other changes in the words you use, try to put an and instead of a but. Yes, and. So there's a whole different meaning when you say those things. We've talked in other weeks about your nervous system kicking in. And when I feel misunderstood, or I feel judged, or I feel the lecture coming on, or you're kicking up shame, I'm going to get defensive. And it's not about resisting change as much as resisting being controlled. You telling me what to do. So let's go back to motivational interviewing that says part of the spirit is autonomy. That person has the right to do anything they want to do, and it's not about me. Let's go a little bit deeper. So, what can you do? Again, let's get to some ideas of what you can do over the next week and hopefully the next year. Simple reflections. What I'm hearing, let me see if I got this right. And I just reflect back the words that you said to me. Complex reflections would be the words, but it would also be a feeling that goes into it. So here are some that might work in any conversation. You've been dealing with this longer than anyone realizes it. That's kind of a simple reflection. You heard them say with that. And now you say, you're really frustrated because you've been dealing with this longer than anyone realizes. or you really feel unheard, or you feel as if there's nobody else that can understand you because you've been dealing with this longer than anyone realizes. Simple is just the words, complex is you throw a feeling in there. And again, it's not about you being right or wrong, it's about trying to find out what the feeling is for that person. When does this get really hard? When you feel really strongly, or they do. When there is a power struggle within this relationship, if I'm talking to my kids, or I'm talking to my boss, or even talking to my spouse, right? And there is some kind of power struggle that's there. Or here's one that we're in right now, value clashes. And even the word value has become that can set off things and be triggering to people. But this is when it becomes very difficult. So, what can you do? You, without the other person, notice your reactions when these things come up. And I've talked before about the difference between a response and a reaction. So, what can you do if you don't want to react? Pause. Just pause. And then name your internal reaction. But this is where your work comes up. Oh, I'm feeling afraid. I'm feeling angry. I'm not feeling heard. Whatever it is, keep the word curiosity in your mind when it comes to looking for empathy. I'm not trying to control you. I'm not trying to change you because I can't change anybody. Maybe myself. Sometimes that's hard enough. But choose being curious about how the person got there. And as I was thinking about this again, I, I really don't mean to oversimplify any of this. That's why I gave it a year. But if I'm driving down the thruway and I got to drive from my house down to Albany, it's about 40 minutes, and this happens all the time. Somebody blows by me and maybe they have political messages on their car I don't believe in. Maybe it's a big old gas guzzler that's going by. Maybe they're just swerving in and out of traffic. I want to be so judgmental about that person. The person that comes up behind me and they're flashing the lights because I'm not going fast enough. Yes, that's happened to me in the last, oh, I'm sure in the last week or two. Um, Instead of saying that, me try, taking their whole inventory to use some recovery language and this person's a jerk or what's wrong with this person. Oh, of course, they'd have that bumper sticker on there. Being curious about maybe the life situation they're in right now. And then I would even add for me, being grateful that I'm not feeling whatever that person is feeling, because I've been that person. Flashing the lights, I got to get there, I'm running late, or, I've dealt with anxiety. So I can't control them. I can't make them do anything. I'm in trouble when I try to. But with my curiosity, I even try to add maybe the word would be grace and give them some grace. For whatever reason, they're having a bad day. Okay, here's some things as we wrap this up. Let's go back to the habits. Habit one, be proactive, not reactive. There is a stimulus, the person clicking their lights or zooming through traffic, and then there is your response. Between that stimulus and that response is a space. You got to own that space, and that's got to be where you make a choice. That can happen in conversation too. Habit two, I use it all the time. Begin with the end in mind. What is my purpose in having this conversation with the person? Is it truly to get to accurate empathy? Am I trying to understand them or am I trying to be right, right? Versus them being wrong. And maybe back yourself up on that. Over the next week, when you go to fix something, I have just the cure for you. Pause, take a breath. What's going on? Oh, I want to fix this. Reflect instead what they've said. Listen for their emotions their feelings and values, not just the problem. It's always the problem, but how do they feel about that? What is their value about that? And try to reflect that too. And here's a good one about autonomy and people having a right to choose what they want. What feels most important to you right now? What is the thing you wish you could change right now? And you're not going to change it for them. Only they can change things for themselves. But asking those questions will show someone that you want to understand, that you want to have empathy, and that you are there with them. You can't fix it, you can't make it better, but I will be there with you for as long as it takes. Please, if you haven't already, I think you subscribe on YouTube. That just shows me the number of people that are following, paying attention. You can leave comments on YouTube, or you can leave them on my website, or you can email me. So please do that. And I will put this week a few resources of Brene Brown's. There's a really great video about the difference between empathy and sympathy. It's short, but it's good. None of this is going to change if you don't have some buy-in and practice these things. Like I said before, it's not like you got to drag yourself to the gym or you even got to put on a YouTube video. That's what I do when I work out now. You're going to have a chance to practice communication every day. And hopefully, some of this feels like it's worth it to you. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy your week, and I'll see you again next week.